here we go. Deck 78.
Step right up and grab a drink. We're back on deck 78. And today, what's your prediction for the fight?
Pain?
That's the wrong movie.
I know it's
Mild
Rocky 3.
discomfort?
I know we will crush you. We will crush you.
No, I will break you.
Oh, you will break you. We will crush you. Is not
We
it.
will
It's
rock
break
you. Then we will break
We will rock you.
will
Freddie
break you.
Mercury versus our next guest, Dolph Lundgren.
No, you know why? Because he has the power.
He has the power of the Master of the Universe. We'll get to that. So anyway, welcome back to another Deck 78. This is the Trek Adjacent podcast from the people who bring you Inglorious Treksperts. As always, I'm Mark A. Altman. I'm here with DAREN DOCHTERMAN. Woo!
Hi!
DAREN DOCHTERMAN. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Oh my God, he's got a soundboard.
And Ashley Edward Miller.
Feel like I should bow.
Well, it's Wednesday. It's a gong.
Yeah, that was J.P.
Andy
Morgan
Farr
that
when
just
I
gone.
need him, you know.
J.P. Morgan. Anyway, we gosh, I mean, this was interesting because we had a chance to sit down with Dolph Lundgren a few months back at GalaxyCon, and I wasn't sure what to expect, to be honest, from Dolph. Obviously, you know, he is this sort of Aryan youth grown up as he's depicted in Rocky 4, and you know,
Totally not.
but no, I'm talking. This is what my expectations were.
He was Russian.
He could not have. Yeah, I know, but you know, he was also.
I know he's Russian,
the
but
first
he's
time
not-
I ever saw him was in A View to a Kill, and he was the product
okay.
of
All right,
you
I
know
understand.
the genetic
Yeah,
testing. You know,
That makes it
he was like Khan. You know, it was kind of like selective breeding by the Russians in A View to a Kill. Okay, but I'm saying this to tee it up to say this is what my expectations were.
I see.
Okay.
In reality, he is one of the nicest guys, and obviously we all heard how smart he is. He went to MIT, but he's not only just really smart, but just a lovely guy, as was his daughter, who was just wonderful as well. And we were so glad to sit down with him. What do you think, DAREN? What a delight.
I thought he was great. I had the same, trepidatious feelings that you did before because I didn't know what to expect. But he was so freaking sweet and smart and had great stories, and he was wonderful.
Yeah, Ashley, you're probably the biggest fan of all of all of us because, of course, you're a big fan of Master of the Universe. So, what do you think of meeting the Lundgren?
Well, first of all, and I didn't get it this time out. This was a gift, but this is my my Dolph Lundgren autographed boxing glove. It's the same glove that type that he wore in Rocky 4. But no,
Because if the glove doesn't fit, you must
have
quit.
quit.
It says from Dolph with love.
It says from Dolph, if no glove, no love. What? No, look, talking to him about like movies and shit is great, but the thing that excited me the most was talking to him about fighting, man. I love getting the opportunity to talk to these guys who have like actually been in the ring and done crazy shit, and like you'll hear him talk about it. But this dude, I mean, he could have been a contender. He could have been
He could have been somebody.
Right. He could have been world champ, man, and he threw it all away just to be famous and make a lot of money and punch Sylvester Stallone in the face.
All because of Grace, of Grace Jones.
Yeah, that's right.
If he hadn't been dating her, then he wouldn't have gotten discovered. And I have to say, that's why I had to get that question right away. Because I knew you were going to go for the Rocky 4 and the Master of the Universe and Universal Soldier. And I had to get the A View to a Kill question in, like, right off the bat. Because, I got to talk about Bond. It's like when DAREN and I had John Rhys Davies on stage, had to go right for the Living Daylights.
Nice.
Yeah. So
you don't want to talk to John Rhys Davies about his time like fighting full contact karate in Tokyo because those stories would not be good.
I got to tell you,
It'd be great, honestly.
just such a great. He was great. I mean, even when we came off stage at the end, just having this wonderful conversation with him, he couldn't have been nicer, you know. And that's one of the great things about these conventions is we've really met some people, you know, that we wouldn't have met otherwise. But you know, a lot of people we meet because we track them down for the podcast, or they come into our orbit through our careers.
Or we,
but I don't think
line them up in our site.
But I don't think Dolph Lundgren is anyone that I would have met under other circumstances, and I'm so glad we did. He was just terrific.
Oh my
I
God.
was very excited to see that we were scheduled to interview him.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Me too.
Everybody
Me too.
should be, because you know what, I think we just ask great questions. We just have great.
I just think we're great. We just ask great questions.
No, but it's like I love listening to you guys ask questions because it's look. I used to go to a lot of conventions, as you guys I'm sure did too, and it's like, and I know like what the standard list of questions are, and it's so rare to just sort of be able to sit with somebody like that and have a real conversation with them about their life and the stuff they've done and just cover all the bases.
I particularly like when I said, "So you remember when you were on Masters of the Universe?" that was awesome.
Yeah. Which was your favorite action figure?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I feel the same way. I love to, you know, sit down and hear what you guys have to ask, and you know, some great stuff came out of it, and it's a terrific conversation. It was a wonderful opportunity. I believe this was where we sat down with him. Was this Des Moines, I think, or was it Columbus? I don't.
It wasn't Columbus. I think it might have been Des Moines, or was it St. Louis?
It was St. Louis, I think.
I think it was St. Louis.
Yeah, we saw him in St. Louis.
Yeah.
So we meet me in St. Louis. Yeah, and no, it was great, and he just really interesting, and it got very heartfelt at the end. So I don't want to be a spoiler. So I think without any ado, let's share this great conversation we had with Dolph Lundgren at GalaxyCon 2025, and we'll be back at the end with a few closing thoughts. So stay tuned.
Columbus Day 2. I'm Mark A. Altman, showrunner, Pandora, writer for the Librarians and Castle. I'm here with my fellow co-host, the writer for Thor and X-Men First Class, Ashley Odra Miller, and the associate producer of Star Trek The Motion Picture Director's Edition, DAREN DOCHTERMAN. Together, we host a podcast called Inglorious Treksperts, and we are delighted. We've never had the joy of interviewing our next guest, but that's about to change because we have none other than the great Dolph Lundgren joining us. Dolph, come on out.
Hello.
There are two great Hollywood discovery stories. One is obviously Lana Turner being found at the Schwab's drugstore on Sunset. The second is you being discovered in Australia. Can you, a guy who has his master's, 2 masters, I believe, in chemical engineering, who does the most dramatic turn I can imagine, embracing an acting and directing career. Can you tell us what that was like, the impetus for that, and just sort of your journey to the screen?
Okay, hey, thanks. Nice to be here. Wonderful. I like the cold weather. Reminds me of Sweden. Actually, I was studying, I was getting my master's from the Royal Institute in Stockholm and Sydney University. And I was also doing some bouncing on the side because I was a kickboxing champion, karate champion actually in Europe. And I was in Sydney, Australia, and I was also doing some concert security. And one of the concerts was a singer from New York, and I worked backstage, and one thing led to another, and basically they were not partying that night, and we came along, me and my buddy who was a security guy as well. And well, anyway, I ended up missing a few classes the next day, I ended up coming to New York. Actually, I went to Tokyo to train some karate and met her again, and then I moved to New York. This is Grace Jones, who was a singer back in the 80s. And then I decided to, I always did some acting as a kid, in junior high school, and I kind of, I was drawn to it. I was drawn to the creative world. I had been painting and doing music as a kid as well. But my dad was an engineer, so that's why I studied engineering, and also to travel, because it was expensive to travel, and I wanted to move to America. So Australia was just kind of a stopover, and I started doing some acting in New York, and I went to some party with Grace, and this little guy with white hair came up and took a picture of me and said, "What are you famous for?" And I'm like, "Nothing, as far as I know." And it was Andy Warhol, and he put me in his magazine, and in Interview magazine. And then I did some acting in New York, and Grace's agent sent me out for a couple of roles, and one of them was a boxing movie. And I stood in a long line of 100 guys, and somebody just sat there at the table. This woman, she said, "How tall are you?" And I was like 6'5". She's like, "Too tall, next." And it was like, I looked behind her, there was a small sign saying Rocky IV, And I was a big Rocky fan, so I ended up trying to get that part, but, they turned me down. And then my acting coach, actually, we had dinner with one of Stallone's friends, John Hertzfeld, who's a director, directed Stallone in a couple of movies. And he's a friend of mine now. But anyway, he did say that, "Did you do any acting?" And I say, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, you're the guy Sly's looking for. He's writing a script about there's a Soviet boxer in it. And aren't you like a champion?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "You got to get me a 8x10. So I got on my motorcycle and drove downtown. We were in Manhattan, and got an 8x10 when I'm all buffed, from Australia with no shirt. And finally, Sly got the picture months later, and I got to meet him in LA, and then I had to practice for a screen test, and I had to put on some muscle because I was kind of slim, big legs, kind of like a fighter, and then I auditioned for it, and there you go, and I got the part, and moved to LA. 95 movies later, or what is it, 100 movies later, I'm sitting here.
I want to take a quick step back, because they say there are no small parts, only small actors. And you actually got your break in the James Bond movie, A View to a Kill. And I can't imagine a better introduction to Hollywood, because, of course, Albert Broccoli was renowned for taking great care of his crews, of his cast. So even on a small movie, that was a true Hollywood experience, of course, in London, in England. What do you remember about that, and working with John Glenn, who was an editor by trade and had directed a bunch of these movies?
Yeah, I remember, I was in New York studying acting, and Grace was working on that character. She was playing the kind of a bad girl in the Bond movie, and we went over there, and it was John Glenn directing. It was Christopher Walken was the main villain, and he was great. I remember I'd done some acting, so I was watching him rehearse, and he was very interesting. He would rehearse one way. He had this one scene. I'm in this one sequence at the racetrack. Some guy didn't show up for work, some stuntman. So John Glenn goes, "Hey, do you want to be in the movie?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm going to screw it up, And he's like, No, just we'll get you a suit, get this gun. You pointed at Chris Walken. And anyway, I am in the picture. But I was watching Chris Walken rehearse, and with this British stage actor he always plays the Russian general, the one that Mr. Bond, that guy.
Walter Gotell, right?
Yeah, Walter Gotell, and so he rehearsed, rehearsal. He would do the scene one way, he would be very kind of reserved, and then take one, he would lose his temper, and I could see this British guy just jump back like half a foot, like, what the hell's going on here? And I just remember going, wow, it's really interesting. He was so unpredictable walking. Like he didn't know himself what was going to happen. And so I remember that. And also Roger Moore being a very, very nice guy, very suave. And he looked like James Bond when he showed up for work in the morning with his driver and his Bentley, And he always, they had this commissary at the Pinewood Studios, and wood-paneled, and there was nice lunches. This is like before he got stressful to be in the movies. He was sitting there smoking a cigar for lunch, and for some reason he always said, "Dolph is larger than Denmark." He always said that. I never figured out what he meant, but he thought it sounded funny. Dolph and Denmark sounded funny.
And Denmark is really small.
Yeah,
so-
really small and also close to Sweden. But anyway, and then I ran into him later, at the Cannes Film Festival many years later, and I was with my kids, my young daughters, and this is when Daniel Craig. I think it was either Daniel Craig or who was before him. It was Brosnan. So I said to my kids, "You want to meet James Bond?" And they were like, "Yeah." And then we came up to Roger Moore's table. They were looking at me like, "That's not James Bond." And I was like, "It's James Bond. Yeah, he was James Bond." And I was talking to Roger, and then he was married to a Danish lady. And he was like, surrounded by Scandinavians. And then I was about to leave. He'd had a few glasses of champagne, I think. And it was a big restaurant packed, during the festival, the Cannes Festival. So I'm walking away, and Dolph, he says, across the whole restaurant, everybody's like, holy shit. They realized it was him, and he says, Dolph, we have another thing in common. I also hate Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I'm like, I don't hate him, but, interesting comment. I guess he'd played a bad guy in a Van Damme movie or something, and it didn't turn out too well. And I think he fired his agent because of that. Roger did. Anyway, there you go.
One last question about that era. You mentioned Andy Warhol and being in Interview magazine.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about what it was like, the factory and all this stuff, and the late '70s, early '80s. By then, what was your impression? Because here you were, you've been in school, you've been doing a lot of traveling, to suddenly be in the thick of like this legendary, iconic figure, and all these people that were coming in and out of, Warhol's orbit.
Well, it was very interesting. He was very, very nice. He was very nice to me, very smart guy. I realized that. He had a lot of people around the factory all the time. I think I was there a few times when he was taking Polaroids of Grace, and I was going in the back looking at all his. He had like a bit of a storage area with all his artwork, and I always remember seeing one thing. He had dinner in Munich. Like in the '60s sometime, and he bought the whole table when the dinner was over. He bought the whole table, and he somehow it was packed in plexiglass, and he cut it up into little pieces, and they sucked the air out. I think so. All the food, everything was still there, with a bill, and I never saw that anywhere else. But I guess it must have been one of his art pieces. But I remember basically. This is like they say, the time, it was New York City, and this is before he got corporate, so it was very kind of loosey-goosey, and, it was dangerous. Grace, I remember, went into her bag. She said, give me my cigarettes. In some club, I come up with this little toy gun, and I look at it, and it's a real gun. It's like a little Derringer two-shooter, like a .32 caliber, and I'm like, why you got a gun? Well, we got tied up. Guy came into our apartment, tied me and my boyfriend up, and robbed us. And I was like, shit, So I remember carrying a gun most of the time. I went to Colorado, bought some guns. There were no metal detectors. So it was a different time, And 54, basically, I think most things you hear about is true. It was if you paid your if you got in, if they picked you out and you paid $20. You could pretty much do anything you wanted in there. It was kind of a bit of a crazy place, It's like they say, it's the time between the pill and AIDS. So people were a little more freewheeling in their social activities.
So-
Interesting to have seen it. I survived.
So that's one of your lives, right? The actor life, and I believe you said that you've lived 5 lives. I want to talk about the 2 lives that came before the actor life. Yeah. The life of the engineer, the scientist, the life of the martial artist. And what I find most interesting about that is that you were clearly somebody who was developing your mind. With the same intensity that you were developing your body and what your body could do. And how did you find the time to put the kind of intense training that you would need to put in to be, a karate champion and actually fighting, not just point sparring, Olympic style, but actually fighting, and at the same time pursue all of those degrees?
Well, yeah, good question. First of all, I didn't have a girlfriend, so that didn't distract me. But basically, I think what happened was my dad and my older brother were engineers. My other brother's an engineer, and I guess I wanted to impress my dad. I think my dad was kind of a very smart guy, but he has his issues. He was kind of violent towards me and my mom, so I had this kind of a bit of a trauma from my childhood. That I think that's the reason I became a fighter, because a lot of, if you speak to men who are in contact sports or in the military or in the police force, a lot of them may have some experience like that, because not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, it kind of motivates you to try to want to be strong and stand up for yourself, which I did.
Both of these were to protect yourself from your dad, mentally and physically.
That's correct. Yeah, you're right. I haven't thought of it that way. Yeah, mentally because I wanted to impress him, and then physically because
just in case.
Yeah, just in case, and also I think it was because I couldn't protect my mom, so I was you're trying to kind of overcompensate, and I would say that once I started pursuing, I was also sick as a kid. I had a lot of allergies, so I wasn't really athletic till I was in my teens. So my first sort of way of feeling special was that I was, I got good grades and I was smart, So then I kind of shifted over slowly towards more of a physical life. So then I ended up doing both because I wanted to go to America because I was there on a scholarship. My dad actually, who's a smart guy, I mean, he had issues, but he always said, he didn't like Sweden. This socialistic country, you can never do anything here. They take all your money. There are too many taxes. If you want to be somebody, you got to go to America. He told me that, like when I was a kid. And I was like, okay. And then I guess I did. I heard he was right. So I did that.
So you're fighting. And you're fighting in Japan, as I understand, right?
Yeah, I fought in Sweden first. Then I fought in Japan. I fought in Australia when I was there. I won the European Championships. Won the Australian Open when I was studying. And I was in Japan training as well. By the time I was about to fight in the World Tournament, when I was a bit of one of the favorites, I would say, I'd already moved to New York and I was about to get into acting, so I didn't follow through there.
But you were doing this, and at the same time you were pursuing this whole other life. And here's what I find I don't want to say that it's crazy, but it's kind of crazy. So, you're a scientist by training. You're an engineer. Certainly there must be some aspiration in that direction. But you're in this full contact, no kidding sport, and you are risking your instrument, your brain. Right? I mean, you're probably like absolutely the smartest person in this convention hall, right? And you are risking your brain by having some wacko kick you in the side of the head.
No, you're right. My dad didn't, it was complicated. You're right, very complex. I got into the fighting because I had something to express. I had some built up trauma, physical trauma, because of the beatings I would get when I was a kid. And I think the only way to express that is, it's called, I've learned later, escape behavior. You're trying to escape something like PTSD. Right. A soldier, you're living under in life-threatening conditions, say in Afghanistan, and you're there for a year, and while you're fighting, it's okay. Your body is in survival mode. You don't really suffer through much from it, but when you get back, when it's over, your body has like another reaction. Your body has to compensate somehow. You have to, whatever comes in through the body has to go out through the body. And the escape behavior could be drugs, alcohol, affairs, violence, things like that. And I think that I had that. It was in me already. And if I hadn't become a fighter, I would have maybe self-destructed in some other way if I hadn't become an actor, because that was more of an emotional expression. So that would, I think without that I wouldn't have survived probably. I would have been very unhappy. as an engineer, I would say, because I had something else that I had to deal with, and acting and fighting was a way for me to deal with that. I didn't know it at the time, but that's how I dealt with it, And that's why I would go out there and, get my nose broken or something, and then I have to go and do a thermonuclear whatever exam 2 days later or something.
As you do.
It's like, who is this guy? What's his problem?
So, Michael Jai White says that there are martial artists and there are fighters. Clearly, at least from the way you talk about it, I believe you see yourself as a fighter first, martial artist second. And I could be wrong, and correct me, but the second part of that is he brings up Bruce Lee as the example of he's the greatest martial artist who ever lived, not a fighter. You got to work with Brandon, who is also a terrific martial artist. Can you talk a little bit first about what Michael said about the difference, and then about working with Brandon and the kind of martial artist that he was?
Well, there's a good. I like Michael J. He's a smart guy. He's right. I do think that you can be a martial artist and a fighter. You can be both. Like my instructor was a world champion, British karate fighter, but he was a martial artist. Martial artist means you've adopted a certain attitude of discipline and self-control, and there's a certain spiritual aspect to it. And I think not all fighters have it, but a lot of fighters have that. But what Michael means that you can be very good at performing in martial arts, but not a great fighter, because you need the killer instinct to be a fighter. It's fight or flight, and it's in your body, and it's hard to know how you're going to react under pressure. Like they say in combat, it's hard to know. Maybe the biggest guy in the platoon, who's the guy who everybody looks up to, could turn and run. Whereas the guy who you think looks like a coward could be the ass kicker who goes out and kicks ass and kills
Your instinct kicks
Yeah, it's an instinct. It's hard to judge, and the same with fighting. So I think I realized I had an aptitude for fighting because I'd already been sort of in a near-death experience as a kid, so I didn't really mind it too much. It was like it didn't really scare me a little bit. It scared me a little bit, but not enough to back up. So that's true. And I like Brandon very much. He was a very good martial artist, you're right. And I think he was also, it's not easy to be Bruce Lee's son. Where are you going to, it's like being Clint Eastwood, doing Westerns, trying to beat him, it's hard. So I like Brandon very much. I thought he would have been a huge movie star. I thought he was a very good actor. As good as Bruce Lee had a lot of charisma, but I think Brandon was a very good actor. I remember that he was very talented. So, Bruce. I don't know if Bruce Lee ever fought in a real tournament. I don't think he did. Maybe that's what Michael Jai White's talking about. Right. But I know Michael is a fighter. Yeah, he's a fighter, but he's also a martial artist. So, one doesn't preclude the other.
Could you take Michael in a fight?
I don't know. Maybe in the old days. He's a bit younger than me, I think. Was about 15 years younger. But I'll wait 15 years and I'll take him.
That's my plan too, honestly.
I want to ask you about Drago. The Rocky franchise is so fascinating. 1976, it wins Best Picture. It's super grounded. It's super 70s. It's real street. By the time we get to Rocky IV, it's after Rocky III, which is like a comic book movie. There's a superhero and a supervillain. Rocky's superhero, Clubber Lang supervillain. Now, Rocky IV is that too, and it's just as wonderful as the original Rocky for a whole different set of reasons. But how do you approach a character like that? Because I would think you still want it to be grounded, you want him to feel real, but he's larger than life.
Yeah, well, good question. Like Sly says, Rocky, he's the only boxer. The more he gets hit, the better he looks, because he has more facial surgery, his jawline, his suits get better. And anyway, but I agree with you that, I obviously for me it was a big break. I realized it was a great opportunity. And I was studying with this guy, Warren Robertson, who was an acting coach in New York. who worked with, Jessica Lange and, a lot of big actors.
No relation to Clubber Lang.
No, Clubber Lang. Yeah, you're right. His cousin. No, but the guy who did Tom Hulse, who played Mozart and Amadeus, he was nominated. He was a young actor. He was in class with me actually, Tom Hulse, and he got that part in 1984, I think, and I got the Rocky part same year. But anyway, I was working with Warren, and he's a method actor, so it was like even though I didn't really know that much about acting, it suited me. Obviously, the guy's a Soviet fighter, he's a champion. I had all that already. I had the attitude. I understood that, and then I had to work on the Soviet part of it. But I was lucky because Warren had some good ideas of being minimalistic, not to move too much. Just to move the eyes, like stay and that's very difficult. Efficiency, like subtlety. And then when I got the part, they gave me this Russian language coach, but he was a stage director from Leningrad, and he was very clever. And then he had escaped Soviet Union. He defected, right? So he knew how they treat young boys that have athletic talent. They're taken from their parents and they're put in a school. They're trained, they have to train in 6 hours a day. And if they fail, they're kicked back into some shitty job in a factory. So there's a lot of pressure. And he told me that, this character, he saw Drago as somebody who's got this, he wants revenge. He wants revenge not on the Americans as much as on his own people. Like he's been
to prove yourself.
Prove yourself and to prove them wrong, So that's kind of where his kind of attitude comes from. And the fact that he ends up killing Apollo Creed, it wasn't really his doing. It just happened, and he doesn't feel good about that. So there's all these levels to the character that that you kind of feel it a little bit when you watch the movie. You're still, scared of Drago, and the kids shit scared of this big Soviet guy, American kids, he's the supervillain. But there was something in the character that was human, that was relatable, and I think that's why I ended up playing, my next picture was, American hero, you could say. He-Man, right? So, so I approached it that way, and I think, between Warren and I had 6 months with Warren, and I had 6 months with this other guy, David Gamberg, the director. So, Stanislavski said it takes 9 months for a baby to develop. It takes 9 months to develop a real dramatic character, at least. And I had about a year. So, So it came from a very deep level, a lot of that stuff. And I think that's why the character, the movie was great, and Sly did a great job, but I think there's something in that character that, I haven't worked that much on as many characters in my career, maybe a few, but, it's that work that shines through.
Well, if there's any connection to chemical engineering, it's the chemistry that you have in that movie against Sly. It's an amazing amalgam of, good versus evil, if you will.
Yeah, good versus evil.
So it comes across so real.
I wouldn't call Sly
scary.
evil in that movie, but
Yeah, he wasn't that evil, but he, as a director, he was a bit evil, What the fuck you doing? My grandmother could do it better than that. I think no, you're right. I think there's good versus evil, and then there's a sort of on a deeper level, like a sort of a brotherhood of these two guys.
Right.
Like the end, there's some kind of feeling of like you kind of don't hate Drago anymore. You realize he was just.
But you understand him.
Yeah, he was just trying to
a poor boy trying to make it in the world.
Yeah, trying to make it in the Soviet Union, and so I think that you're right. There was a lot of there's some interesting stuff in the picture, and I don't know. I think about it sometimes that I wasn't aware of the fact that, you know, when I spoke some of those lines 40 years ago, that I'm going to be saying that shit for like 40 years. But, you know, then I saw Coppola, you know, I saw in a retrospective of his pictures, he was talking about, you know, how his movies, right? And he said, you know, all his movies are very different, right? Like, he really tries to go, you know, from The Godfather to like Apocalypse Now, and then he has, you know, other, you know, about, you know, somebody starting a car factory, a car
Tucker.
brand. Yeah, what's that one called? Turner?
Tucker.
Tucker, yeah. Anyway, he was saying how some movies, he said all his movies were not received very well when they first opened, you know. And he said, like, some movies have a lot, they live on. They live on, and that means it takes about 20 years to know which film's going to live on and which won't. And just because it makes a lot of money doesn't mean it will live on. It just means it made a lot of money. And it's because some movies that don't make a lot of money live on for like 100 years.
Well,
so, you know.
Speaking of that, I mean, 40 years later, you get a call from your agent saying, they want you to play Drago again. What was that? I mean, could you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not Star Wars. I mean, suddenly you hear you're getting a call to reprise this character after literally decades. What was your feeling about that?
Yeah, I didn't feel like I wanted to do it. I thought they were going to exploit the character and make him like a Soviet bad guy, you know, like a cardboard cutout. And there was a script. I started reading it. And I stopped after about 20 pages. This is shit. I don't want to do this. You know, it was like racial. You know, he was a racist, and my son in the movie was like, you know, with Michael B., you know, and it's like, no, this is bad. But then they brought in this new director, Stephen Capel, and he rewrote it. And, you know, he comes from the projects, you know, this guy, and he understood, okay, Drago and his son, they're like living in the projects in Ukraine, you know, right. So he kind of rewrote the characters, and I read that script, and it was very good. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. Because basically the whole premise for my guy was, if there's one guy in the whole wild world who will never throw in the towel, it's Ivan Drago. And of course, at the end of the movie, when he throws it in to save his son, it's like, whoa, shit, you know. Who thought of that? I mean, because you don't even remember that there is the opportunity to throw in the towel. I couldn't even, you know, it's an expression, but you can actually do it, you know. And so I thought, wow, this is a great arc. If I ever saw a good arc, this is it. So I love that one. Yeah, it was good.
So another character who never throws in the towel is one that, yeah. There's one you played that people don't really think about, but honestly, it might be maybe my favorite version of it because it was just so insane. You were the first actor who ever played the Punisher. Right?
Yeah. Punish the guilty.
It's like you had it was the best delivery of the line "I'm Batman" that anybody has ever delivered on screen. When the lady,
I can't remember that, but
yeah,
I guess I said it.
The crazy Yakuza lady was like torturing you, and she asked you who you were, and you said, "I'm Batman." It was awesome. Come on, people. But I mean, that's New World Pictures. That's Roger Corman. That's like just a world removed from working on something like He-Man or working on something like Rocky IV.
Maybe
yeah.
Rocky.
Yeah. Well, the first
Rocky.
20 minutes of He-Man are pretty crazy, but yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, I didn't know who the Punisher was. I got some comic books and checked them out. But it was also rewritten. The script was written by Robert Kamen, who did, Karate Kid. He wrote, Taken, I think, and ended up doing all of those later. A very good writer, and he's a martial artist too. He's a Goju-Ryu guy. So that was fun. That's kind of when I brought martial arts back, because I hadn't done any martial arts in my other films, and that was the first time they brought some fighters in from Tokyo, and these two guys from Tokyo, and they showed up in Sydney, Australia, and they were thinking they're here to fight me, fight Dolph Lundgren, but no, they're here for a movie. They didn't understand it, So and they were both, when they both got killed in a picture, they were both in tears. They were crushed. They're gonna you can't go back to Japan now, they've lost face. One was actually in tears on set. Yeah, it was funny. But
did you kill him and put him out of his misery?
Yeah, with a spear.
Sorry, man.
Sorry, buddy.
Well,
let's talk a little bit about He-Man, because it is a divisive movie. Some people, think it's fine. It's a cartoon thing. Other people love it. I'm in that second group. I love He-Man. I think you are so iconic and chiseled and surreal in it that it's so much fun to watch. And I actually went and I saw it at the Universal City Cinemas with James Cameron. And we watched that, and afterwards we said, well, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it? And I said, yeah. But I so enjoy that movie, and I'm friends with Bill Malone, who was the main designer on it. And it's such a surprise to see this, little cartoon made so beautifully real, and you fit so well in it.
Well, thank you. I agree. I think, when I was disappointed when the film came out, Canon Films kind of went under.
Yeah.
Well, they ran out of money, and they had to we still had a huge stage, but they had to cut it in half.
They ran out of money that they could skim off the top.
Yeah, exactly. They stole too much. So, I do think the character, I saw the movie. There was the 40th anniversary of the birth of He-Man. I think he came out in 1983 or something. So 2023, I went to a Marvel screening of that picture, and it was cool. It kind of holds up. I saw a 35 millimeter print, which was kind of cool.
It totally does.
Yeah, it holds up. It's very kind of childlike, but I like it. It holds up, and I do look pretty buffed. How do you end up looking like that? I don't know. It's like watching Arnold in Conan.
Yeah, right.
Nobody's going to pull that off today. There are enough steroids in the world to look like that because, because people don't want to train 8 hours a day like Arnold did, I like Masters, and I think there's a certain resurgence because there's a new picture coming out next year. I noticed now in the signing, at the table signings, there's Masters and Rocky are kind of like dead heat now. It's sort of, it's almost, I think Rocky still has a little edge, but say 20 years ago, there was very little Masters.
Right.
That's coming back. There's something kind of interesting about that story, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, who would win in a fight, He-Man or Ivan Drago?
Well, I think He-Man's got the sword, and I was bigger as He-Man. I weighed about 250, and then Rocky, I was about 225.
Wow.
You're just a little guy.
Yeah, I was a tiny little runt.
And I think, it's wonderful how candid and funny you are talking about that movie in Electric Boogaloo, the great documentary about Canon Films and the infamous Go-Go Boys. What else, you all were rowing in one direction, trying to make the best, your own version of Star Wars, adapt this animated series into this great movie, and then you have Golan and Globus, who are just sort of tripping you guys up at every turn to accomplish what you set out to do, whether it's Gary directing and you guys, and you still managed to pull it off despite having all of these impediments, which the producer should be working with you, not against you.
Well, you're right. But I think it's part of my path on this earth is to be up against, tough odds all the time.
Sure.
I have been from the beginning since I was a kid, and you're right. Yeah, that movie could have been, much better, and could have been better producers, more money, et cetera, et cetera. You look at my buddy Stallone. He was obviously, he wanted to be an actor since he was very young. He was, he's a terrific writer. His first picture, he won the Academy Award for. He was nominated as an actor, won for Best Screenplay, and and I started out in a totally different side. Came in as a kind of a fighter, as a I don't know what, chemical engineer / karate champion / actor.
Yeah.
And then I got famous overnight. Overnight, basically in 90 minutes, I went from nobody really knew who I was to, everybody wanted to take pictures of me, and I kind of, my head was spinning for 4 or 5 years after, and so Masters was just part of that kind of a maelstrom of
Sure.
what the hell happened, and so I think I wasn't really focused on how do I make this a success. I tried as best I could.
You're just riding the waves.
Just riding the wave, yeah. that's kind of what it's been like, you know.
Well, you talk about how you have gone through a lot, and one of those lives, one of those 5 lives, is the survivor. Obviously, you had a very difficult childhood that you had to figure out how to survive. Martial arts was obviously a part of that. Like your academic pursuits were a part of that, but you had a terrible health scare that obviously built into that.
Yeah, I did actually. There was. I thought I had some bad battles, in the past, but then of course I didn't know the big one was about to come up about 5 years ago, and I went through a cancer situation, cancer diagnosis, kidney cancer, and it was actually there 10 years ago, but for 5 years I thought it was gone, but it came back, and I wouldn't be sitting here if I hadn't gotten a second opinion, which I was shooting 2 movies in London. I was shooting Expendables 4 and Aquaman, the sequel to Aquaman, and things weren't looking good. I was being treated by a very good doctor in Los Angeles, but it turned out they hadn't really done their homework, and I sent some biopsies and things off to another doctor at UCLA because of a friend of mine, and she said, "No, that's the wrong treatment. You've been on the wrong treatment for a couple of years." Wow. So when I changed, I was losing weight, and everything kind of changed slowly. And it's only like in the past, I'd say, this is 2021, and I'd say so the worst period was 22, I would say, and then it kind of 23, 24, it got better, and then so I've been cancer-free. This NED, it's called, no evidence of disease, for about 3 years now. So, yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So I'm helping some other folks. People come to me and ask for advice. Sometimes I try to point them in the right direction, because if I hadn't done what I did, I would have been dead. Like if I hadn't, like I usually do, like you're in a fight and you're so, in karate, they have to pick you up off the mat and tie your belt and throw you back out there, and and then suddenly you realize the other guy he never got back up. You won, and you're like, oh shit, I won this fight. But that's how much hard it is sometimes, and it was the same with this cancer battle. But finally, I kind of pulled out of it, and I must say that it was kind of one of the best things that ever happened to me, was to go through that, because I kind of look at life differently now. It doesn't really bother me. Little things don't bother me much, and I'm very happy, grateful for everything I've gotten so far in this life, and I think if the cancer hadn't come, I probably would have. I was burning the candle at both ends, too much travel, too much training, too much of this, too much of that, and I wasn't really good to myself. So now I treat myself better, and I think it's a good thing.
Well, you've done a lot of very hard, difficult things in your life in a lot of different spheres. What would you say is the most difficult, the hardest thing you've done, and why is it being a dad?
Being a dad? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it is one of the most difficult, but also one of the most rewarding things, because, once you have somebody who means more to you than yourself, like if you have to give up your life for somebody, you can do it without hesitation for your kid, then I think it's a very sobering experience, and it's a great experience to have that. Otherwise, you can become too egocentric, especially in our business, I love that. No, it's been good, and it's difficult when you're in the show business to make sure you're with your kids enough. And I've been, in some ways not a good dad in that respect, but I've been trying to make up for it. And actually, my daughter is here with me today. Greta, she's here somewhere in the back over there, helping me out. She's never seen a Comic-Con, but she's really happy to be here.
Oh, good. That's great. Dolph, you sort of exercised another muscle, directing. What was the impetus for that, and what were some of the lessons you took from directors you worked with that you applied to your own directing career?
Yeah, thanks. I've directed a couple of movies because I wanted to see what it was like. One, that was part of it, and the other part was, this is about 5 years before Expendables, the first Expendables. I hadn't been on the big screen for 15 years. My career was had moved to Spain. My career was kind of heading straight down. I took like a 90% salary cut from, 1990, let's say from 1991 to 2001. So I wanted to direct some movies to kind of help my career, and I knew that I probably knew more about it than most of the other directors they could hire, that they could afford. So I drew on my own creativity, my own experience from all those directors I worked with, especially good guys like Stallone, for instance, John Woo. I worked with him. There were many other directors I've worked with that I kind of just picked up things from. How they make the actors feel comfortable, how they, like Stallone, they prepare a lot beforehand. Other directors are very much into being, spontaneous on set. Editing, I've been part of editing pictures before, and also writing is important. So, I don't write from scratch, but I rewrite stuff. So I think all of that was just something I wanted to try and see if I can do it,
Well, at the beginning of the panel, you mentioned Jean-Claude, but I'd love to talk just briefly about Universal Soldier and working with Roland Emmerich. And obviously, that's another film that's really beloved in your oeuvre. Are you surprised when you did that movie has stood the test of time?
Yes and no. I mean, that was another picture that maybe didn't do as well as they had hoped for at the time. Because it was the first time I co-starred with somebody, had, same bill, I was billed, equal billing with another actor. Before, with Stallone, of course, I was way down, and Masters, I was, above the title, and then it was me, Jean-Claude. And I learned a lot from him. He was smarter than me in many ways about his career, about, designing his fight scenes, and, so it was a good experience. Roland, of course, was very clever, and I think he did a good job. They had to reshoot the ending. There was a slight story problem in that picture. So they did a test, it didn't work out well, they have to reshoot the ending, add more fighting between us. But I think that the picture is kind of still very 90s, and people seem to like it, because it's me and Jean-Claude as young men, we're just fresh in the business and squaring off. I think, I like that picture too. I think it's a cool picture.
This has been so much fun. I don't have any more questions because I think you've answered everything.
I think there's probably a lot more to talk about, but we can't because we're at the end of the panel. We want to thank you, Dolph. This was terrific. Having you here was wonderful.
That was amazing.
Thank you all for being here. And, Dolph will be at his table with Greta signing for the rest of the convention. So if there are questions you didn't get to ask or you want to get his autograph, please visit him at their table.
And help us decide, what is bigger, Rocky or Masters of the Universe, right? This is really
It's
a
up to you.
scientific poll that we're
Yeah,
conducting.
and I want to just thank you guys. It was a pleasure to have a panel like this. They usually have just one person, but you guys are very knowledgeable, and it's really nice to get those
Well,
questions.
we figured it had to be 3 against 1
Yeah.
because we wouldn't have a chance.
At least.
We're back. We're back on Deck 78.
A view to a Dolph.
You know what I've been thinking about? Because, we have the Synthahol here on the Deck 78. I've been watching with Isaac the Ken Burns Prohibition. What a great documentary that is. I mean, all Ken Burns documentaries are great.
You kind
but
of have to drink something while you're watching it, though.
you kind of feel like you kind of feel like you want to, because
You need to have a gin and tonic.
it's like all these temperance unions and the people. It's like, to hell with them. It's like you want to have a drink just to kind of be like, to hell with you people. I'm not even a
that's
big
when-
drinker, but I just
that's when cocktails were invented. Cocktails were invented to cover up the taste of the badly made liquor that was available during Prohibition.
No, that's interesting. They started the mixers. They started mixing
Yeah.
stuff in because the alcohol was like
Lower
distilled
quality. They was
in,
made in bathtubs.
Yeah, actually,
Hawkeye's tent in MASH.
my dad and I figured out that my grandfather was a bootlegger.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, a bootlegger, not a bootlicker.
Not a bootlicker, a bootlegger.
No,
those are
that's-
two different activities.
That's someone else we know.
Yeah, but it's not my grandfather. They're like, I wonder why you kept making runs, like, every weekend from the hills of Appalachia down to Florida and back. He would stop at a resort and return. And like he had this car with like all this like trunk space and all this other stuff, but he jumped up the engine and did all this other stuff. Like, why would he do that? And we're rolling through all of this, and we just sort of looked at each other and we went, "Oh my God, like that's what he was doing during this era of his life." We sort of unpacked it. So
yeah, no, I think I mentioned this before. My grandfather was a driver for Dutch Schultz in New York.
Yeah, you did mention
crap.
that. That's really cool.
And
we need to do a
same
remake of the
same
Gumball
time
Rally
period.
with our grandfathers in it.
That's right.
Who played him in the Cotton Club? Not James Remar played Dutch Schultz. Who played your grandfather?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't know. But yeah, it's really terrific, and I get all upset when people try and force their morals and their religion on other people. It gets me crazy. So even watching it, even though this thing was back in the 1920s, I'm getting really angry at these people, So, and then I think, okay, in the Wild Bunch, they're all going to get shot, so it's fine.
They're long since dead.
They're all long since dead. But oh my gosh.
But actually, I was disappointed that you didn't ask Dolph what was it like acting with Ram Man.
That wasn't acting.
Did you see the trailer for the new Masters of the Universe?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks fine.
fine.
See, I'm a little out of that demo because I didn't
Aren't?
because like by the 80s, like I wasn't into like the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and
Right.
She-Ra and all
I
that
was.
stuff. I was not because I was I aged out of that stuff. So so I'm like I have no attachment whatsoever to He-Man. And
I don't either, but I had a younger brother who was.
Okay.
Weirdly enough, I feel like that movie. I mean, because we've had conversation after conversation about it on the 4:30 movie, but I feel like this movie has a lot to live up to in this sense.
What?
Bear with me, because the first half hour of that movie that's set in Eternia
Yeah.
looks beautiful and
It's
it's
amazing. Yeah.
awesome. It's amazing.
It's way better than it needed to be.
100%. And like I don't know like what we saw of Eternia in the new trailer looks as cool as that and feels as cool.
More CGI.
More CGI. And Dolph was kind of perfect.
But it was perfect. Frank Langella as Skeletor was
right?
great. Yeah. I like that. I like that Frank Langella. But I am not a fan of that movie at all. But I am a fan of an Electric Boogaloo, the segment where they talk about that movie. And
Well, I'm a fan of pretending that Skeletor was like a villain on Deep Space Nine. So,
yeah, and he was involved with Kaiopaka,
Yeah,
who was
exactly.
also a nurse
Yeah.
at a psychiatric institute in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's.
6 Degrees of Deep Space Nine is always a fun game.
Well, Little Green Men established the fact that our history and there, so maybe they went thrown back in time because of the paw race or something.
There you go.
Or the
Doubling
mom
down
race.
on the paw race. Oh, I hate those paw races. It's one thing about Deep Space Nine I don't like, but this is a Dolph Lundgren podcast. This is
Yes.
Right.
So I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dolph Lundgren. I thought it was
We
really
sure did.
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us for another Deck 78. If you want to get every episode of Deck 78 and listen to it commercial free, you can subscribe at trekspertsplus.com. And we hope to see you back here on Deck 78 sometime soon.
And we hope to get Mr. T next time.
Mr. T. That'd be great. If we
be
can
great.
find him.
Yeah, but somewhere
that's
in
right.
in LA. And until then,
I tried to get him for my 1982 documentary, and we couldn't get him. I don't know.
No, it's weird. I saw him this was years ago, but I was at like a freaking Gelson's in like Eagle Rock or something, and I saw him. He was in the dairy aisle. There you go. Who knew? Mr. T, milk.
I pity the cow.
I pity the cow.
Okay.
My goodness.
I mean,
Very odd.
when you're going to go to Mr. T quotes, do you go to the A Team or do you go to Rocky 3? Both
You go to
very
both.
Well, they're
quotable.
the same.
Or you just kind of cross him over.
They're the same.
I don't know. He has a good heart in A Team. B.A. Baracus is a good person trying to do good things,
But he's
who got
still
railroaded by
bad.
the government in Vietnam. But in Rocky 3, he's a bad dude. He's a bad dude.
Very bad.
He's coming after Balboa. He's besmirching the honor of Balboa's wife, Adrian.
What?
and he's coming. He's not good. And he pummeled him. He's a wrecking machine.
Hit him with a pummel.
What is that when Burgess Meredith says that great scene where he goes, "He's gonna destroy you"? I mean, it's like because Rocky's not training, he's not taking it seriously, and Burgess Meredith just like goes off on
Trust
Rocky.
me, Rock. It's the same thing that happened to me in Batman.
That's not what he says. That's not at all what he says. Burgess Meredith is so good in those Rocky movies. It was
I
so
love
sad.
Burgess
Spoiler
Meredith.
alert when he dies because
Yeah.
he was great. But you kind of
What,
had
he dies?
Yeah, he dies. He died. Yeah, he died. But he was great.
He's great.
Love that Burgess Meredith. He's great in everything. Great
Yeah.
Time Enough at Last, Twilight Zone. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to be back with another Deck 78 soon. Of course, you can listen to Inglorious Treksperts every Thursday wherever you get your podcast, or you can watch us now on YouTube, which is delightful. And we hope to see you back here. And of course, don't forget the wonderful friends of the Ticonderoga official set tour have launched a Kickstarter devoted to creating a hangar bay, a shuttle bay for the shuttlecraft. And it's doing extremely well. It came out of the gate or came out of the hangar bay like on fire. But you
They
could
met
do
their
your
first
part.
goal tonight.
That's fantastic.
And they're working on their stretch goals. Please
Good
help
for
them.
them.
Now they're on to Plan B.
Yeah,
for
so you want to go to
America.
Kickstarter? What's the name of the Kickstarter, Darren?
Oh, I don't have that with me. I'm
It's called
sorry.
I don't have it with me.com. No, it's so go
Go
Look
to
up Land the
Destruct
Shuttle
Zero.
on Kickstarter.
land the shuttle on Kickstarter and make sure that it has a good home in Ticonderoga where you'll be able to visit it for years and years and years. And it's join the expedition. There's so many great people are supporting it. It's such a great cause, and you can be part of it. So make it happen. Make it happen today if you
Make
haven't
it
already.
so, in fact.
Well, I don't know. It's not the right show. You're not the.
But
because
that's okay. It's
So
all
is a
one big
needle
happy
pulling
fleet.
thread.
it's like it's out there that way. Okay.
Yes.
On
Straight
that
on till
note, let's just finish by saying fire the rockets and see you soon.